Hello, my friend, and welcome to the Indigo Women podcast. My name is Natalie, and I'm the creator of the Indigo Women. Indigo stands for Intentional Network of Divinely and Intuitively Guided Old Souls. We are a community of powerhouse, soul-centered women who are devoted to stepping into higher self-consciousness, releasing limiting beliefs, and living from a state of flow. I'm so excited that you're here and that you've joined us for episode 7 of this podcast, in which we're going to explore the 4 levels of consciousness. This is going to be a biggie. This is basically the backbone of my mentorship. This is the backbone of what I do and how I do it. And I'm beyond excited to share all of this with you because this is a principle that absolutely changed my own life. I learned about the levels of consciousness from my own mentor. I pass it on to my clients, and it really, really helps to have this as a tool as you learn and grow and move through the human experience. So before we get into all of that, I just wanted to take a moment and acknowledge the fact that you may have noticed I'm doing something a little different on this podcast episode. Normally, I live stream the recordings of my podcast episode directly into my Facebook group, but today I wanted to try something a little different and record ahead of time to see if we can increase the quality of these videos. So if you're someone who watches the replay on YouTube or on Facebook, it's really nice to have a little bit of a better quality. So thank you for bearing with me as I try out new things. This is the first time that I've ever been consistent with a podcast before, so I'm definitely learning as I go. The next step will be also improving the echo of the sound quality. We have hardwood floors. So one little step at a time. And the thing that I'm also always trying to improve is getting rid of the ums, which is always very exciting when you're learning how to speak in this type of way. So thank you for learning and growing with me. I'm very much a trial and error person, and it means the world to me that you are tagging along for this journey. If you have not yet subscribed on YouTube or followed in our Facebook group or followed on Spotify or wherever it is that you are streaming this podcast episode from, it would really mean the world to me if you followed, subscribed, commented, liked, interacted in any way. It helps with the algorithm. It helps us to get seen by more women so that we can grow our community and really start reaching all of these incredible powerhouse soul-centered women that need that community so they can really grow and step into the highest level of themselves. And that's what we're here to do, right? So speaking of levels, let's go ahead and dive into today's topic. As I mentioned, this is such a biggie for me, and I'm going to do my best to keep it shorter and also file away the ideas for future podcast episodes, because even though it's only 4 levels of consciousness, each one of these levels can be broken apart and talked about for hours and hours. So I'm going to do my best. Okay, so the first thing that is really important to me is that I establish who it is that I'm talking to in these podcast episodes, specifically this one. So this particular podcast episode, when we're going to talk about the 4 levels of consciousness, I originally learned about these levels of consciousness from my mentor when I was in the doer era of my life. And I genuinely feel that these levels resonate so much with the women who are focused on the achievement and empowerment and I have to do everything era of their lives. And that is one of the 4 levels of consciousness. We're going to get into that in just a little bit. But it's important to acknowledge that in this episode and in general with my mentorship practice, I'm really talking to those women. I'm talking to those of you who have accidentally intertwined your idea of your self-worth with your productivity and with your achievements. I'm also talking to those of you who have been doing that for a long time and now you're tired. You're just tired. You're like, I have been working so hard on my healing. I have been doing my best, going to therapy, integrating my trauma, figuring out what my triggers are, identifying my issues, working through them, learning from them, doing, working, healing. And I'm tired. I just want peace. I just want peace. I just want balance. I just want flow. How the heck do I get there? My friend, if that's you, hi, you are so in the right place. And I'm really, really happy to have you here because I was exactly where you are right now. And I'm telling you that there is a way to find that peace. And hopefully this particular podcast episode is going to inspire you in a big way to start moving into that level of consciousness. So I would say that if I could summarize all of it, and then we're going to break it down, I would summarize it by saying that what has gotten you to this point is doing, and what is going to get you into flow is being. A lot of women believe that flow state is something that you do, and that's not the case. Flow state is something that you are. There has to be a shift away from the doing, the making, the achieving, and there has to be a shift into the being, the accepting, and the resting. And this is the juice. This is the thing. This is it. This is the practice. So, okay, that's enough of a prequel. Let's go ahead and jump in. So many women come to me having done it all, and they just want to find flow and peace, but they're not realizing that flow is something that you are, and it's not something that you do. So what happens is that the women who come to me, for the most part, their baseline is working. Their baseline is doing, producing, achieving, making things happen. They are the doers, and that is their baseline. Every day they wake up in the morning and they go, okay, what do I have to get done today? What needs to happen so that my life can continue to function? What appointments do I have to make? What morning routine needs to get done? How many deep breaths do I need to take before I can check that off of my to-do list? That tends to be the baseline. And then what happens is that every once in a while, these women will get into a state of flow. And when they're in that state of flow, all of a sudden, everything feels like magic. Everything aligns. They're somehow manifesting things. They feel like a magnet for incredible moments and opportunity. There's this gratitude, there's this appreciation. Flow state can come in so many different forms. Maybe they get there because they worked on a project that they were really passionate about. Maybe they got there because they took a yoga class or went on a retreat that spoke to their soul. Maybe they took a vacation into the mountains with their lover and they're sitting on the porch of the cabin overlooking the most beautiful vista and they go, oh my God, this is it. This is it. I feel so peaceful. I feel so calm. I feel as though I am just in it. And then what happens? Maybe they go to bed, they wake up the next morning, and the anxiety is right back. This impulse to do, to make, to create, or maybe they come back from vacation and they go back to work, and all of a sudden, that state of flow, that appreciation, that connection of co-creation is just gone. And they'll come back into flow state again later, but they don't know how they did it. So that baseline of working and doing is most of their existence, and they get to take that little peek up into flow state from time to time, and then, oh no, they've lost it, and they're back into the working and the doing until they spontaneously reach flow state again. The goal of my practice and the goal of what I do as a mentor is to flip that so that baseline becomes flow state, and flow state becomes their baseline. This is so doable. This is crazy doable. And you can get there two ways. One is connecting with your higher self-consciousness. And two is removing the limiting beliefs that prevent you from staying in higher self-consciousness at all times. So when you do eventually have flow state as your baseline, you will drop out of it from time to time, but dropping out of it is what becomes temporary. So maybe you're in that flow state and you're just vibing, and the universe goes, all right, time for you to learn your next lesson. So you get thrown a curveball or something happens that knocks you out of it. You go back into this kind of workspace of, okay, now I need to integrate, I need to heal, I need to make another therapy session, I need to move through this, I need to figure this out. And then once the lesson is integrated, you go right back into that state of flow. That mode of living is so full of magic. It's so full of creativity, openness, gratitude, and awe. And that is where we go within the Indigo Women. So let's take a moment now that we've really connected what the goal is. And specifically, this is the work that I do within the Awakened Indigo Activation, which is my signature program, where the focus is on flipping. If you are someone who has that work, do, make baseline with a little bit of flow sometimes, and you want to be in flow always with a little bit of work, that's what we do within the Awakened Indigo Activation. So when the Awakened Indigo Activation begins, one of the first things that we do is we establish the rules of being a human. And I imagine that there are countless ways for people to get into flow state. In my personal philosophy and in my own personal life and in my own personal experience, I have found that agreeing to the rules of being human is so important to get into and maintain flow state. If you can make these 9 rules part of your personal beliefs, flow state becomes so much more accessible. As I mentioned before, flow is not something that you do. It's something that you are. Who you are is comprised of your beliefs, your values, your identities, or identity, depending on how many you have. So this is the belief component of who you are. If you can fully integrate and believe these 9 rules of being human, entering flow state and staying there becomes far more accessible. So what are the 9 rules of being human? You've actually probably seen these before. I've seen them all over social media for years now. And it typically is introduced as the rules of being human, which were written in ancient Sanskrit. I can't tell you what the exact source is of these bad boys, but I can tell you that these rules show up in so many different philosophies and ideologies of how to live a meaningful, balanced, and peaceful life. So I'm going to read them through once, and then we'll go through them again and just break them down a little bit. Rule number 1, you will receive a body. Rule number 2, you will learn lessons. Rule number 3, there are no mistakes, only lessons. Rule number 4, a lesson is repeated until it is learned. Rule number 5, learning lessons does not end. If you are alive, there are lessons to be learned. Rule number 6, there is no better than here. Rule number 7, others are merely mirrors of you. Rule number 8, what you make of your life is up to you. And rule number 9, the answers lie inside of you. All you need to do is look, listen, and trust. So let's break down these rules one at a time. The reason why I'm sharing these rules with you before we get into the 4 levels of consciousness is because I believe that looking through the 4 levels of consciousness through the eyes of these ancient rules just gives them that much of a deeper meaning. So number 1, you will receive a body. You may like it or not, but it is yours the whole round. The whole time that you are doing the human thing, you will have a body. it comes standard. In my personal philosophy, learning to love that body and work with that body and integrate the lessons of this body is the whole point. What comes with the body is an ego. The ego is there to protect the body. The ego is there to keep the body alive. The ego exists for your survival. You need the body in order to stay within the human experience. The sooner that you can accept that, the easier it is to make peace with your body, to love your body. It's the reason that you get to have this very temporary perception of being human. The second rule is that you will learn lessons. You are enrolled in a full-time school called life. This whole thing is just for learning. I have found that every single thing I experience is either a blessing or a lesson. That's it. There's nothing else. There are blessings and there are lessons. And again, the sooner that you can accept that that's all it is, the more easily you can find peace and flow. Number 3 is that there's no mistakes. There's only lessons. Growth is a process of trial and error. What happens is that when people start to identify with their mistakes, they end up accumulating these energies of shame and guilt and grief. And those are biggies: the hurt, the anger, the sadness. Those can create a more powerful ego. The more powerful our ego is, the harder it is to remember that we're just here having a human experience for a finite period of time. When our ego is big and loud, we forget our true nature. So really embracing the idea that there are no mistakes, only lessons, we can let go of the guilt and the shame when things don't happen perfectly. They're not supposed to. We're not here to have a perfect experience. That can happen when we're no longer in our bodies. For now, we're here to make mistakes, to learn from trial and error, and to just enjoy that process. Number 4 is that a lesson is repeated until it is learned. This is a really important one if you're somebody who notices patterns in your life. Maybe you keep attracting the same type of partners. Maybe there's something that's going on in your work life where you get the same boss no matter where you go. This is an indication that there is a lesson that you haven't quite learned yet. And it's going to be repeated again and again until you learn it and integrate it. And then what happens? You get to move on to the next lesson. Which goes on to number 5, learning lessons does not end. If you are alive, there are lessons to be learned. And I think that's a really important principle of spiritual growth. When we get into the 4 levels of consciousness, you're going to see that we don't just stay in one level. We don't just get to one level and ride it out for eternity. That's not what we came here for. We came here to always be learning, always be growing. This is such a beautiful, finite experience of growth, of forgetting and then remembering, of feeling emotions that we would never get to feel if we weren't within a human body. So just remember, learning lessons doesn't end. As long as you are human, there are lessons to learn. Number 6 is that there is no better than here. And man, do I know this in my heart, soul, gut. I'm someone who traveled the world extensively for 2 years, and I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt that there is no better than here. As soon as you get there, you're going to want to be here. It's always, always, always going to be that your peace is within you. It doesn't come from external circumstances. It always comes from within. I'm skipping ahead to number 9, but I feel that it's pertinent here as well. Number 7 is that others are merely mirrors of you. This one took me a long time to accept. I think it takes a lot of people a long time to accept, and then we need to re-accept it again and again and again. It's very easy to look at others and go, oh, thank God I'm not like them. Oh, I don't have any of the traits that they do. But when we can realize that all we ever do is project our own perception onto other people, we can recognize that they are very valuable mirrors for us. Our relationships, interactions, and it doesn't matter who we're interacting with. We could be interacting with a stranger on the internet, but they are going to provide a mirror for us. They're going to show us something about ourselves if we choose to look. There is no you and them. There's only oneness, which we'll talk about once we get to the stages of consciousness. But when we really believe that principle of oneness, it truly does become a fact that other people are just mirrors of our own inner workings and our own perceptions. We are simply projecting our own inner space onto the people around us. Number 8 is that what you make of your life is up to you. One of my favorite things to talk about with the women in my community is this idea of a higher purpose. And a lot of people, once again, believe that higher purpose is something that you do. People believe that your higher purpose is to become a Reiki master or become a teacher or do some sort of volunteer work or build something. I don't believe that your higher purpose is something that you do. I believe that your higher purpose is something that you are. And when you align with what you are, the things that you do really become a reflection of that identity. So with this one, what you make of your life is up to you. I genuinely don't believe that people come to Earth with this purpose of doing something. I think that they come with this purpose of being something, and what they do ends up being a byproduct of the choices that they make from that state of being. And finally, number 9, the answers lie inside of you. All you need to do is look, listen, and trust. This is also one of the backbones of my mentorship. I tell my clients, I'm not here to teach you anything. I'm here to remind you of what you already know. I'm here to show you what you already are. You don't need to learn new things. You need to remember what you already know. You need to step into who you already are. And that's the fun part. That's what I love. So when I was talking about the Awaken Indigo activation, it's the process of removing the barriers to accepting the human condition in its entirety and anchoring the part of you that remembers your wholeness. Human life is temporary, but source consciousness is forever. Your source consciousness, some people call it a soul, some people call it a starseed, whatever you want to call it, that little chunk of energy within you that just knows. That part of you is infinite. Your body's going to fall away. Your ego's going to fall away. All of this human drama is eventually going to fall away. It already has fallen away because everything is infinite and you're simply perceiving human life. That's another podcast episode. But that soul seed, that part of you that knows, that is your higher self-consciousness, and it can be anchored into your being. Once it is anchored, once you remember it all day, every day, and once you truly embody the fact that being human is a temporary experience, that is when flow state happens, okay? So this is where the 4 levels of consciousness can serve as a thermometer to where we are currently functioning in relation to that flow state. Let me explain what I mean. There are 4 stages of consciousness. And once again, this is one of those things where it is shown in so many different places. It is discussed by so many different people that I don't actually know what the source of this information is. In the same way that those rules for being human is just kind of there, It's the same with these 4 levels of consciousness. So if you do happen to know where it comes from and you'd like to share, please feel free to send me a message or send me an email or just put a comment down. Let me know where these come from, because I'd love to give credit where credit is due. But I also feel that it's such a universal truth that it might just be something that is kind of part of the human collective consciousness at this point. The 4 levels of consciousness are to me, by me, through me, and as me. So let's start with to me consciousness. To me consciousness is the lowest level of consciousness. It's something all of us have experienced at one point or another. It might even be something that we currently experience regularly, and that's okay. It's part of being human. To me consciousness is the belief that life happens to me. It is an identity of victimhood. The behaviors that come from to me consciousness are blaming and complaining. There's a belief that there is a problem and that someone else is at fault. There's also this narrative of why me, or why did that happen? Why can really send us on a spiral of to me consciousness. Most people begin their healing journey in to me consciousness. And the healing journey usually begins because they're so sick and tired of victimhood. It can be exhausting to be the victim all the time. It can be really exhausting to blame everybody else for your problems, because then it never changes. To me consciousness doesn't have any empowerment to it. It's simply the belief and the acceptance of there's nothing I can do. Most powerhouse women, most soul-centered women will get to a breaking point in this stage and go, I can't take it anymore. Something's got to be done about this. And that's when we start to move into that second phase of consciousness, which is by me consciousness. This is when we start to become empowered and we recognize, wait a minute, I can do something about my circumstances. I can heal. I can get myself to therapy. I can open up about what's going on in my inner world. I can also change what's going on in my inner world. Holy cow, I have the power here. I can make life happen. And I can turn these problems of to me consciousness into opportunities. I can establish what I want. I can tell the universe, these are my desires. This is where the focus is on achievement, productivity, doing, making. But this is where I see a lot of spiritual women start to get stuck. Because even though there's this incredible opportunity for empowerment and yes, I can, and I will, and I do, sometimes the universe is not necessarily aligned with what it is that you think you need to be creating. And that turns into this energy of forcing, of having to do things, of making that to-do list every morning and feeling like, oh, okay, I have to cross these off. I must take those 10 deep breaths so that I can check off that I was mindful today. That is where the stuckness can sometimes happen. And this is where I start to see very powerful and soul-centered women get frustrated because they know this ain't it. They know that there's something else, that there's more. There's that little soul seed inside of them that is reminding them, hey, I'm here for this finite time, and I'd really like to just accept being human so that I can really live from this higher state of consciousness, and I can be in flow state, and I can just vibe with the universe. And that is where we start to move into that through me consciousness. Through me consciousness is another word for flow state. It's another word for higher self-consciousness. This is where we start to recognize, realize, and live from the idea that we are co-creators with the universe, that it is a dance of listening, of flowing, of surrendering. The belief has to do with allowing and accepting. I co-create with the universe. I live in constant gratitude, wonder, flow, and awe. I allow. Life handles all the apparent problems, quote unquote. I experience things as perfect, whole, and complete. Life just happens. Don't you feel so much peace from what I just said? That right there, in my personal opinion and experience, is the state in which we really accept those rules of being human. We go, yeah, I'm just vibing in this body and I'm accepting these lessons as they come to me and I'm integrating them and I'm enjoying this dance. And damn, am I grateful for all of it. I look around me and I am in awe of all of it. I am in love with this experience of just being a person, whatever the heck that means. Life handles my quote unquote problems for me. I'm just vibing. Juicy, juicy goodness. Love me some flow state. And then finally, that fourth level of consciousness is as me consciousness. And this is the most enlightened, most connected, most one, most opposite of duality sort of consciousness that you can have. The belief is that life is you. There's no difference between you and life. It is simply oneness. It is peace. There are no problems and there's no one to solve them. There's no questions, just knowing. And this is the space of unlimited freedom. Some people can get here in very, very deep meditation. Sometimes it happens in dream state. I believe all of us have that within us. It's just a matter of really settling into it. And while I love that as me consciousness, and I've had the privilege of experiencing it a few times in my life, personally, where I am at in my own life is that I don't fully want to release the human drama yet. If I'm being fully transparent, I like the lessons. I like the ups and downs. I like that I get to learn things while I'm in this human experience. I still identify with my ego. It's still there, but that's okay. I think eventually I'll probably get to a point where I'm like, as me consciousness sounds really nice. I'm going to go ahead and go there. But for the time being, I personally love living with a baseline of flow state and still taking time to integrate those human lessons, to have a big juicy cry every once in a while, to get angry because I stubbed my toe. I only get to be human for, 76 years on average, if I'm lucky. So why not just enjoy it? Why not just accept it? This is all part of it. It's all temporary. I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. And that's it. Living life from that space and also guiding my clients to also live life from that space has been so incredibly rewarding. So once we understand these 4 levels of consciousness, they can be used as a thermometer in our lives. I can tell you, even just last night, I created this big to-do list spontaneously. And there's a huge difference between creating a to-do list from through me consciousness, from flow state, and creating a to-do list through by me consciousness. I have to make stuff happen state. And oh my gosh, did I create a to-do list from by me consciousness last night. I was looking at this whole thing. I wrote it on my whiteboard, which is behind me, which is my new favorite toy. And I was with my partner and I was looking at it and I was like, how am I going to get everything done? I went to bed thinking about it last night. And then fortunately, I woke up this morning and I went, what? No, we're not doing that. So I came into the room. I erased the whole thing and I just sat down and closed my eyes and put my hand on my heart and I listened. Not even what needs to be done, but like, what am I being called to do today? What needs to flow through me today? What is in my highest good to just create today? What am I creating today? And I knew exactly what needed to happen. It's not even that it needed to happen. It just happened through me in the way that it was supposed to, in the way that it was meant to, in the way that was aligned for me. And it felt incredible to erase a to-do list of 12 things and just make it one thing. And knowing, oh my God, that's it. That's the thing today. Amazing. This burden was lifted off my shoulders. The one thing that did come through is something I'm really excited to do. I'm basically going to be reading a book all day because it's going to inform my coaching this weekend. And everything else, it'll get done when the time is right for me to do it, when I'm in the flow state to do it. That's so cool. That to me is freedom. And it really was learning these 4 stages of consciousness and being able to check in with myself, especially when I'm uncomfortable. Check in with myself and be like, oh God, this doesn't feel good. I'm so stressed. Where am I living from? What state of consciousness am I vibing on today? So, friends, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in once again. Please follow, subscribe, like, comment, interact with me. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, at the Indigo Women. It's all right there for you. We'd love for you to be part of our community, to join in on these activations, continue to listen to our podcast, all that good stuff. We want this community to grow. We want to bring in all of the women who are ready for this stage because you have done the work. My God, have you done the work? You've done everything. It's time to stop doing and just allow yourself to be. And I am more than happy to help you with that by helping you connect to your higher self, release those limiting beliefs, and get yourself into a state of flow. You deserve it. It's right there for you. You're already in it. You just have to remember. That's what it's all about. Thanks again for tuning in. Next time, I'm going to figure out how to get rid of the dog barking in the background. That's Bertel. He lives on the first floor and he has a lot to say. So someday, this is going to be a very clean podcast. There's going to maybe even be edits. I don't know. We'll see. One day at a time. But thank you so much for sticking around, for enjoying this journey with me. I really appreciate you, and I'll see you next time. Have a great day. Bye.